This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Get 2 times membership rewards points per dollar on eligible purchases in key business categories, as well as on each eligible purchase of $5,000 or more, on up to $2 million in eligible purchases per calendar year. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
Welcome to the Japan on Film podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine, and today we are talking about the 2021 film Baby Assassins, Baby Waru Kyure in Japanese. And here to discuss that with me is new guest Peter Divito. Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good myself. My kids are home, as I mentioned, off camera, so we may get some interruptions, but we'll see how much of this we can get done with that before they start to demand attention. But anyway, before we start talking about the movie, why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I am born Pittsburgh, and born in Pittsburgh, still live in Pittsburgh. I am a huge fan of movies, also a huge fan of music. In my 20s, I did a local music zine here in Pittsburgh called 2020 Proof. I was heavily involved in the music scene. Recently, I began making music on my own, and I make beats under the producer name No Kids Got Cats. And basically, a lot of my music is influenced by film, and I'm just a huge fan of Japanese film in general as well. So that's pretty much, my main interest is movies and music, to be quite honest.
Okay, very cool. And we'll at the end of the show, we'll talk a little bit about where people can go listen to your music if they're interested in that. But as we are a Japanese film podcast, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got interested in Japanese movies in the first place?
Sure. So I think probably, as a kid, I was very lucky where I grew up. There was, 3 theaters within a mile distance of where I lived. I could basically walk up the street and see movies. There was also a local video store. It was called Incredibly Strange Video, and they stocked a lot of foreign film, a lot of underground stuff that you couldn't really find. Obviously, I don't have the nostalgia and memories of a blockbuster the way a lot of other people seem to have. I really preferred more of the, mom and pop shops like that. But I think I was really exposed to Japanese film probably right around after I got out of high school, probably 18, 19 years old. And I remember renting videos from that store, specifically like Takeshi Kitano, who I'm a huge fan of. And he was probably my first exposure to Japanese film. Constantine was a huge thing that was basically got me into a lot of different stuff.
So I'm guessing that was probably around late 90s or so?
Yeah. I graduated high school in 97, so probably around that time. Like I remember seeing, when did it come out? I remember seeing Brother in the movie theater. I got like a private screening of that because nobody else attended that movie. But yeah, I mean, it's basically I kind of tracked down all of his work, and that just led me to discover other Japanese directors. And here in Pittsburgh, we're very lucky. Like we have a Japanese film festival here every March.
Oh,
and
cool.
it's at the local Rep Theater, Row House Theater, literally down the block from me. And that's just like a really fun 2 weeks of just watching lots of Japanese movies. So it's something that I look forward to every year.
Okay, cool. So if any listeners are near that area, definitely go check that out as well. Yeah, so late 90s, around that time, that's kind of you see a lot of these similar stories happening because that was around the time when Quentin Tarantino, I believe, was doing a lot of promotion of some of the Japanese films. Like he was talking up Sonatine and later, a few years later, Battle Royale and things of that nature. And I remember that kind of spurred on a lot of U.S. distribution of those movies, which, and in some cases, Katana wasn't sure if those movies would actually be successful in overseas markets. I remember that was the case with Sonatine. I think it was either Katana or the production studio. One of them thought that the movie was too Japanese for Western audiences, and then it ended up being a huge hit with Western audiences.
Yeah, it is definitely right up my alley. My personal favorite from him still is Wannabe though. Like I love all of his work, but that's definitely my favorite, I would have to say.
Okay, cool. All right, and now today, as I mentioned, we are not talking about Kitano actually, but instead we are talking about Baby Assassins. Now, the Japanese title is, I mentioned, Baby Waru kyuu re, which I believe is just the Japanese version of Valkyrie. So, Baby Valkyrie is kind of what it's titled in Japanese, and Assassins obviously a much more understandable title in English. And this came out in 2021 and stars Saori Izawa and Takaishi as contract killers who just graduated from high school, and they're living out. And it's a really interesting film. I really had a good time watching this last night. But before we jump into my thoughts about it, what is your history with this movie?
Sure. So it's kind of interesting. So I in 2019 I started going to the film festival in Austin, Fantastic Fest. I went with my wife for the first time in 2019. And it's kind of an endurance test. You see, anywhere up to 5 movies a day, and it lasts for, 8 days. After the first day, my wife was basically like, I don't know if I can do this. So I was like, okay, we'll do 4 movies tomorrow. And so I was like, you know what? She opted out. She's like, I don't want to do it next year. I said, I'm going. So I had a badge for 2020. COVID happened. They rolled it over. I thought it was going to be normal in 2021, but it ended up being a little bit different. It was like a reduced festival. So I was like, you know what? I'll go down anyways. And I wasn't going to see as many movies. And I kind of stumbled into this movie just by chance. So I was going to a beer fest at a local brewery there, and I was going to spend all day there. And my phone started to die, and there was like a farmhouse, and it literally had no outlets and no way to charge my phone. So I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get out of here. I have to Uber. I don't know anyone here. So I was like, let me Uber to this theater. Baby Assassins is showing. I'll get there. I'll charge my phone. So that's basically what I did. So it was the world premiere of the movie there in Austin. And I walked into the movie and I basically walked out converted. And I was like, I need this to be like Police Academy. I need 10 movies. I need one every year. This is amazing. And I just kind of fell in love with it instantly. And that's basically how I got exposed to this series. So yeah.
Yeah, well, looks like you're kind of getting your wish because it has had 2 sequels. So Baby Assassins 2 came out in 2023, then Baby Assassins Nice Days following year in 2024. And there's also a television show, Baby Assassins Every Day, which was a 12-episode series that premiered in September of 2024 on TV Tokyo. I'm not sure if that's been released in the West yet, though.
It
I'm pretty sure.
just did.
Oh, it just
Yeah.
got out. Okay. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
it's wild because they put it on HBO Max, and I never would have dreamed walking out of that movie theater. I mean, when I said like, oh yeah, I want one of these every year, like that's what I want. I never expected. Honestly, I didn't even know if I would see that movie ever again, and that's kind of the experience at Fantastic Fest. Is sometimes there's films that don't get distribution. And you might hear about them, you might see them a year later if you're lucky, and for me, I'm really lucky because Pittsburgh is kind of the second home of showing those films. So like I saw the world premiere of the first one, I saw the US premiere of the second one in Austin. and I saw the world premiere in New York with director Sakamoto in attendance. I drove up there and saw that with my wife. But they've shown basically all of those films at the Japanese Film Festival. So it has a pretty big fault. Like in Pittsburgh, there's people that actually know about this series and are big fans of the series as well.
Okay, very cool. So what was it about the movie that really kind of appealed to you so much, what coming out of the theater that made you want a new one of
Yeah,
these every year?
yeah, that's a great question. How I explain it to people is, I think I'm also like a huge fan of X-Files, and I grew up on that series. And it's kind of the same thing. I fell in love with that series as a kid. And to me, it's really about the two leads and the dynamics between the two leads and how they interact and just how well written and like the chemistry between them. And you care about the lead characters. I think even more so as the films go on, because it just kind of develops their relationship, and Sakamoto explores different things with the films and the series. But I think, what I knew, I was like, well, this could be, I think a lot of people are going to love it. Is like, my wife was like, you know, what character do you think I'm more like? And I think when somebody says that, it's because they really relate to the characters in the film, and they're just really well written. So that's just really what grabbed me. I mean, obviously the action is amazing. Even in the first film, it's low budget. But that was really, it was just the characters. And I think the leads, the actresses are amazing in the roles. So
Yeah, I agree. I thought they were both very engaging. I love their dynamic together. I love watching them try and struggle through the grind of everyday Japanese society. And we could talk about some of those aspects of it, because I think that really comes through, and I think it really has a resonance in terms of the stifles, or the performance aspect that happens in a lot of Japanese workplaces. So I completely fell in love with this movie last night watching it. And it's funny, there are times it kind of reminds me, my mind went to two other movies as I was watching it. One
okay.
was John Wick, and I thought there was some definite
Yes.
John Wick type influences, especially the whole idea of like this kind of like, which is kind of implied, like a secret society of assassins type of thing, because they
Mhm.
have this handler who talks about how they have to go out into the real world now. So there's kind of like this idea of like they've been raised in this life, they've been raised by this organization, whatever it is. um and also so much of the fact they have their own like cleanup crew, and that comes to clean up after their missions are done, and they can also call on them even when it's something that's outside of a mission parameters, which we could talk about that too. There's a great scene in there which I thought was very very Japanese.
Yes.
um but also there's the other movie that I was thinking of was a Japanese film, 2LDK. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that movie or if you've ever heard of
I
it.
have not. I will add it to my watch list. Is it a director that I would know, or is
You
it?
know what? I can't recall the director's name offhand, but it's a very it's not quite the same idea, but in some ways there's a similar idea. So the whole thing about 2LDK, and we covered it a few years back on the show, but it's these two actresses who are living in this who are sharing this apartment, and basically they just have their feud with each other, their problems living with each other just escalate and escalate and escalate until they kill each other, and it's just like increasingly extreme ways that they try and attack each other, and it's all set within this one apartment. So it's a really interesting movie, and there was some of that dynamic early on with the two of them, like when they're kind of fighting in the apartment,
Yes.
and so I was definitely picking up on some of that aspect as well.
Yeah,
uh,
I would say that, a story that was told by the one producer at the premiere of Baby Assassin's Nice Days was the casting of those leads. Was they both appeared in the Sakamoto film, A Janitor. Before this, they had a brief cameo in that film, not the same characters, but basically very similar in terms of the roles. And the producer, I guess, was walking by when Sakamoto was editing the film and was like, "Wait, who are these women?" And he's like, "You need to basically put them in something immediately." So when he saw them on screen, he was like, "Yeah, put them together and make a film around them." Is basically what was said at that premiere.
Well, it makes sense. That explains why they have such great chemistry on screen. Like that was obviously a really good idea, and it does feel like Sakamoto wrote this film for these two. So that definitely seems to fit. Um, one of the things that I did mention the Japanese workplace thing. So one of the whole kind of driving notion of this idea that kind of sets the plot in motion is their handler tells them that they have to move into an apartment together. They have to share a room. They can't live on the society's dime anymore. And but they also have to take on part-time jobs. So they have to kind of like integrate into society, and not so much for money, but just so that they can fit into society. So they're trying different types of jobs. Like it opens up with Mahito at a job interview and it doesn't go too well. And she fantasizes about going on a killing spree over them. And then we also see with Chisato, she's trying to get a job at I think it was a bakery she's trying at one point, and then that's not
Yeah,
working out too
she's
well. And
baking the putting the cream with the mango scene. Yes.
right, yes. And then they both try to get a job at this maid cafe, which if anyone doesn't know, it's like these cafes you go to, and these pretty young women are dressed as French maids, and they like, they speak in like very like, cutesy voices. You pay a set fee or whatever, you buy the whatever's on the menu, and they'll sit and they'll talk with you, and they'll play games with you, and stuff like that. It's a whole thing in Japan. And uh Chisato fits right in there. Like she's able to fit right in with the culture and like the kind of like cutesy atmosphere and everything. But Mahito just like has no time for it. She just can't buy into like the silliness of it, and she just ends up, going back off on her own while they're having their welcome party, and then she goes and she's sitting on the couch just watching cat videos by herself all night. And so those aspects of it, like the two of them trying to fit into Japanese society and like the different expectations of Japanese society and all that. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I really loved how they, the characters are again extremely different, much like again like the X-Files, like Mulder and Scully are very, they're kind of polar opposites, yet they work so well together. And I think that's what these two characters is. Mahiro is much more soft-spoken, socially anxious, uncomfortable, and things like that, where Chisato is able to basically slide right in and kind of can play the part as needed. So yeah, I really enjoyed those scenes as well.
Yeah, yeah. There's also some, little commentary here and there about the struggles that young people face in Japanese society, I found, because increasingly we are seeing with the younger generations, they're 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 less interested with putting up with kind of like the facade of niceties that you have to play up with in Japanese society. And I thought that was really reflected with Mahiro's attitude towards basically everything in the movie.
Yes, and I love the scene where they're presenting like, adult things like health insurance, and it's like
Mhm.
I never learned about this, which honestly is true. I think in American society as well, is like, there's a lot of things that it's just you're a kid and then you're adult and you're expected to know all of these things that nobody really shows you. For the most part, I know for a lot of people that maybe don't have parents that are like that involved, but yeah, I love that scene where it's just like I have to do adult stuff. What are you talking about?
Yeah, and in Japan, like the national health insurance program and all that, and having to navigate that and like the tax forms, and yeah, it can be challenging even if you are Japanese, let alone if you're not like me and having to navigate all that. Um, and another thing too was the Yakuza group here. So one of the things I thought was really funny was, and I'm not sure if it's his actual daughter, because in the Yakuza they have like a family structure, so they refer to people in family terms, like they refer to their oyabun, the head of the organization, as kind of like their father. They refer to their fellows as their brothers, or in this case sister, and all that. So I wasn't sure if that was intended to just be a reflection of regular Yakuza structure, if they actually were related. But one of the things I did like in there was how this Yakuza guy, he's kind of a forward-thinking guy in terms of like gender politics, where he's saying like, hey, he's telling his lieutenant, he's like, hey, look, you're being kind of sexist there. We shouldn't be discriminating against women. It's the modern day now. So I thought that was kind of funny too.
And he also very much a capitalist as well. He's like,
Yeah.
hey, these things make money. Well, like, why are you looking down upon them when they bring in profits? Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter if she's just running a prostitution ring. Like, that's on the same level as what you do. So
Right. Yeah, exactly. So those aspects of it, I really enjoyed that. And then also, like, and I mentioned this scene. This is the scene I really wanted to talk about, was the cleanup crew scene that we have. So the Yakuza come into this maid cafe where Chisato's working, and with the and just watching the Yakuza guys trying to do like the cutesy magic words was hilarious. Um,
yes.
but at one point they're asking the maid to write characters on it, and I can't remember what the characters. I think it was like I think it was
Code of
duty,
conduct, I think.
code of conduct. Yeah, it was the translation.
It was
Um,
something ridiculously long that does not go well.
it was the first character was very easy, but the second character is very, very complex. There's a lot of strokes involved in it, and trying to do it with ketchup on a small omelet would be challenging for anyone. And so she screws it up, and the Yakuza guy gets really pissed, and he said, and this is what throws him off. And then though, so um he puts them all up against the wall, and he decides he's going to, basically run them all into a prostitution ring. And this is when Chisato, she basically takes over, and she kills them both. And then she calls the cleanup crew, and the cleanup crew comes, and the guy's telling her, he's like, well, it's going to be a fee now, because you're not doing this. This wasn't part of a mission. So it's not covered under our standard contract. And also then he's criticizing the job she does. Like, look, next time you kill someone, can you not shoot them in the face? Can you shoot them in the heart instead? It makes it a lot easier for us. And just like this kind of like back and forth. And I swear to God, I've had not the exact same conversation, but similar conversations with like repairmen and stuff like that, when they're coming in and they're lecturing you about different things, or people in the workplace, and they're lecturing you about how to do your job because it will make their job easier. And it rang so true to me. The fact that not even the assassins can escape the Japanese bureaucracy. I love that aspect of it.
That's well. The good news is that crew is present moving forward in the rest of the series, and it expands. So there's even more scenes like that in the next two films and the series as well, which they introduce additional characters, which I found great and amusing as well.
Oh, great. I'm definitely looking forward to checking out more of those then. How about you? What were some things that really kind of jumped out at you? You mentioned the characters and the action. Was there anything else that really kind of rang specifically true to you, or rang interesting to you?
Yeah, physical comedy. I think Akari Takeishi is honestly one of my favorite actresses right now. I think I don't know if you've seen Ghost Killer or not.
No, I actually just stumbled upon that as I was bringing up the IMDb page for this. I noticed her face on the poster, and then I clicked to look at it, see if it was connected. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious about it after reading the description here.
Yeah, and it's a lot of the same crew from this film. And it's a lot of action, but I mean, for me, I think it's just because she can kind of move between being dramatic to being funny, to doing, really intense action scenes. Not so much in this film, but as the series goes on, she's definitely more involved regarding that. But I think that just I find her hilarious, and I think when you rewatch the film and you watch her facial expressions like during certain scenes and what she does in the background, I think her timing is brilliant, to be quite honest. And the action scenes I really enjoy because they're not the typical choreography that you see from a lot of action films, especially here in America, where it's like, we're going to shake the camera until you vomit.
Mhm.
And it's also very, to me, like, I love boxing. I've boxed, and I love that kind of fighting style. And the choreography in this film is very much more of a boxing fighting style. than what you typically see, especially like with the feints and the punches and blocking punches and ducking and like, close quarters combat and stuff like that. So I really loved all of those aspects of the film. I just think it's great. I mean, I love the fact that it's like slice of life, like slacker comedy, with
Mhm.
some action sequences inserted, and it kind of flips itself. As the series goes on, what's brilliant about it is each film is different from this film. Like it's not just a total rehash of Baby Assassins.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm really curious about checking out the other films and also the. Have you seen the TV show yet?
Yes, I love it.
Okay.
And there's great action, the choreography in that, but I think it uses its time to develop the characters even more. And kind of goes more into what you were referencing regarding like the John Wick, like more of the mythology and kind of like setup behind that. And also like the relationship between the two main characters. So I mean, I would highly recommend like anybody who loves the films, like watch the series immediately. I don't think you would be disappointed at all.
Yeah, I'm curious about the films. I'm especially curious about the third film because that's in Miyazaki, which is the prefecture right next to mine. So,
Oh, interesting. Okay.
yeah, so I'm interested in that just to, have there because there aren't a lot of things that happen in this area of Japan as far as movies go. So I'm really curious about seeing that for that reason.
It's
Um,
it's very different than the first two in the sense that I tell people that it's more of an action film with some of the comedy and convo from the first two films, but it's definitely much different. It's a much larger budget and a much bigger scale and much more like action, and it's dark, it's very dark as well. It's a much darker
okay,
film. Yeah,
that's interesting.
there's some horror elements honestly in it, and I think horror fans would like it as well.
Yeah. And the fight choreography too. I agree. Like despite the low budget, they really make the most of it. This does not, and sometimes Japanese action movies, they can be hit or miss because of the budget. Like sometimes the action can be very poorly choreographed, but the choreographer in this, who is Kensuke Sonomura,
Yes.
he's amazing. He does an excellent job navigating the action and making the most of what he can with what he's got.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. I mean, and he's worked on the other ones. And what was the other film he directed besides he did Ghost Killer, right? And then was it Bad City? I can't remember exactly. I think that's it. I should know that, but yeah, his stuff is completely unique and a lot different than what you're seeing in other films right now.
So I just looked him out now. Yeah, Bad City was the other one. He also looks like that. Yeah, that's the only Bad City and a movie called Hydra. I'm not sure if that's a short or if that's a full length
Hydra, I
feature.
haven't seen. I saw Bad City. That played at Fantastic Fest, and then Ghost Killer played there as well.
Bad City, that's actually been one that's on my list, so I'm curious to check that out now because I didn't know it was. Now that I've seen this and knowing that he directed Bad City, I'm more interested in checking it out than I was before. Um, what are some other things that jumped out at you rewatching this movie?
So I mean, I would say that basically just like the discussion of, the conversations that they have are just kind of about like normal run of the mill things. And yeah, it's engaging. So it's like if you told me, yeah, we're making a movie where people just talk about these things for the most part, like, yeah, there's some action, there's some killing and stuff like that in it. But really, whenever the characters talk, they're going to be talking about routine things or laying on the couch or watching cat videos. Yet it's still really fun to watch. Um, and I think, I like reading how other people's takes on the films and how they relate to the characters. Like I've seen some reviews and thoughts about Mihiro through the lens of somebody with autism, and how they view that character and how they relate to that character. So I think it's just kind of like that. I would say that that's the stuff that really jumps out at me for sure.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but with her kind of like social anxieties or social difficulties, it that and how she's not able to like fit into society. I think that's another really interesting aspect of it because that's another thing that people who who struggle on the spectrum. They have issues fitting into the kind of rigidness of Japanese society. So that's something else we can talk a little bit more of, but we're going to take a quick break and then we'll come right back and you might hear some ads.
K-pop Demon Hunters Haja Boys breakfast meal and Huntrix meal have just dropped at McDonald's. They're calling this a battle for the fans. What do you say to that, Rumi?
It's not a battle. So glad the Saja Boys could take breakfast and give our meal the rest of the day.
It is an honor to share.
No, it's our honor.
It is a larger honor.
No, really. Stop.
You can really feel the respect in this battle. Pick a meal to pick a side.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's while supplies last.
This episode is brought to you by Palmolive. Family time isn't just the big moments. It's weeknight dinners, sitting around the table, everyone talking all at once. So when the plates are empty and the sink is full, use Palmolive Ultra. Palmolive's most powerful formula removes up to 99.9% of grease, leaving your dishes sparkling clean. And the new convenient pump makes cleaning even easier, so you can spend less time tackling dishes and more time together. Shop now at palmolive.com.
And we're back, still talking about Baby Assassins. So right before we took the ad break, we were talking a little bit about Mahito and her social anxieties. And that's another thing that really kind of rang true to me, is just how she has these difficulties in these customer service centric jobs. Because for anyone who doesn't know, like, Japanese customer service has a reputation around the world as being, some of the best in the world, but it can be very straining on the people who have to work in there, because it is, and in fact, now they've even started hanging up signs in a lot of Japanese workplaces warning customers against employee harassment, because of how the employees are forced to be, basically on all the time, and they have to be, they have to maintain the incredible standards of professionalism. They've also gotten harassed a lot by customers, and they've been treated pretty crappily by customers. So I've seen that firsthand myself. So I definitely felt for Mahito in the scenes when she's like imagining tearing apart the convenience store and all the workers in there.
So is it basically the culture there is the customer's always right to the extreme?
Yeah, pretty much. But it's not even so much that, but it's just like you are expected to, as the employee, you are expected to just basically, the customer's always right. It's probably the best way of saying it. But yeah, it is. And just like the standards of professionalism, like the tone of voice you're expected to use, all of that is like very, very, it's very much like there's a very big performance aspect in it.
Okay. So it's good for a character like Chisato, who can slide into that, has no problem performing, versus Mahiro, who's like, why am I here doing this? This is
exactly stupid. Yeah, and I think that was and when they get to the end, they're talking to the handler, and the handler talks about how Mahito should consider maybe getting her driver's license and getting a job as a driver. That'd be the perfect type of job for her, because then she wouldn't have to deal with people directly.
Yeah, makes sense.
And also the Yakuza plot here, and which the Yakuza plot pretty much only exists just to give the girls something to shoot at. But I really get the sense that the director is much more interested in the scenes when they're just sitting on the couch and talking at each other.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think that's, and although I would say I'm wondering how much of that was based on the budget and limitations of the film. Where it's, this is what we can do, and we can only have one action sequence at the beginning and one at the end, and that's all we can really afford, or if that's really how he structured the film and that's how he wanted it. Just because as the series progresses, each film becomes bigger, and you can see his style kind of evolving, and he does different things with the camera. It has a lot more action, and it looks a lot different as the series goes on, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, you know what I was thinking, and I saw one review on IMDb comparing it to a mix of 90s indie film and gangster flick, and I'm really zeroing in on that myself now. And I found myself thinking, like, this really is a very 90s movie. There's another podcast on our network called At the Movies in the 90s, and if you did not know what year this movie was made in, and if they didn't, and obviously the technology, I think this could easily have been a 90s film, because it really much feels like it's like if Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino made a movie together, it would probably look something like this.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's why that's part of why I gravitate to it, because of it kind of feels like something I could have grown up with. And maybe it just taps into something that there's a nostalgia factor with me regarding that. But yeah, I would completely agree that it's not like, besides like what you said with the comparison to the John Wick elements, there aren't really any other modern gangster films or that I can think of that take this approach.
No, this kind of film, and this is the kind of film that was very dominant in the 90s, and I think most of the reviews I've seen, because I've seen some mixed reviews about this, like just glancing at IMDb and Letterboxd, and there are some reviews that are very, very positive, and then there are some that are, and the positive reviews, and it's funny, the positive reviews and the negative reviews, they're almost talking about the same thing. So
Yeah.
they all agree that the action is really good, but the negative reviews say that there's not enough action, and most of the movie is just the two characters sitting around and talking to each other, and it gets very boring or it's meandering. Whereas the reviews that are positive, they also talk about how, oh, the action's great, but what's really great is the scenes of the girls just sitting around talking. So I really feel like that might be speaking to a generational divide in the audience, where I think people like us who grew up with these movies in the 90s are much more possessed to liking this movie, whereas people maybe from younger generations are kind of like, why is this dragging? Why are you wasting our time with all this?
Yeah, and I would just, it makes me think of that one, meme from The Simpsons, where it's like, it's not me, it's the children that are wrong. It's
Yeah.
the people that review this negatively. I mean, I get it. I think it's one of those films where I'm just like, it's going to click for you or it doesn't. And for me, it just, it hit something for me, and it was just a perfect film. I would tell those people, hey, listen, if you don't like this one, skip to part 3. If you don't like that style of the first film, the third film might be up your alley, because it's really kind of flips it on its head, and it's much more of a standard action film with less of those scenes in it. And I said maybe that will be your vibe. So I tell people, like, don't give up on the series if you didn't like the first one. Like, keep going and see, because each one is honestly very different.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very curious to check out the rest of the movies in this series, and it is, I think maybe, yeah, and this, it's kind of sad, because this is the kind of movie you don't see much these days, and you'd kind of hinted at this yourself. And this is something I had talked about recently with someone else, about the fact that studios these days, they aren't really interested in the kind of like lower budget or even mid-budget films, and they tend to more be interested in the go for broke big tentpole stuff. And even in Japan, that's true to a certain extent, because you're seeing a lot more of these like live action adaptations of manga and stuff like that. So this kind of film, it really feels like a lost art these days.
Yeah, I would agree. But that being said, I would say, one thing I've noticed is that, and I don't know if you've seen any of this where you're at, is that there is a lot of merch for this film over there in Japan. Like, a lot. Like, they do consistent merch drops. There are a lot of really dedicated fans in Japan that post about it a lot. Over here in America, I'm like kind of like a weirdo for loving the films as much as I do. Whereas over there, it seems like it's much more commonplace. Like, they do clothing drops, they do, the acrylic stands, they do the pictures. Like, they have a lot of merch tie-ins that you would never see ever in America with any film, especially one this small.
That's interesting. I have not noticed anything yet, but that's also before I've seen the movie. So now I actually have to do some Christmas shopping coming up next week. So I'm gonna keep an eye out when I hit up the malls and stuff, and see if I can find any of the merch that's around there. And yeah, I guess now that you mentioned that, I do recall, because I use English, I use movies in one of my English classes, And at the beginning of the class, I give the students a survey asking them like what movies they saw over the break and all that. And I think, as I recall, I think this one was mentioned a few times in some of the surveys.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend in Kyoto, and she's originally from Japan, and she went to college with me. So I've known her for, over 20 years. She actually does like the translation for my stuff when I put out my cassettes. Um, but she's my hookup. She's like my connect for merch over there. She will be like, oh yeah, I went to, I grabbed it. She'll ship it over to me. She went to the store recently and got me like the new sweatshirt that they dropped for the just like a baby assassin sweatshirt. I mean, you would never see anything like that over here. You see maybe like a popcorn bucket, at the local theater for like, but it's usually for big films like Dune, or stuff like that. Like those are the tie-ins that we get over here. We don't get the level of stuff that they get with this series, which to me is, I don't know, maybe that's something that helped keep the series going, was just having a cult audience that's really dedicated to it.
One of the things I've noticed lately here is a lot of movie merchandise in general, like T-shirts and posters and some things like that. And in fact, not only for new movies, but also for older movies too. So
Oh,
one example is like I'm starting to see a lot more stuff for like, back. In fact, in this class I mentioned, two of the movies I have the students choose from a list of movies, and two of the movies they chose in the beginning were Jaws and Back to the Future. And these are all kids who are all first year university students, so they've never seen these movies before.
oh
But I
wow.
feel like
Um,
what it is it's the merchandise. They have seen like the Back to the Future and Jaws t-shirts at like H&M or Uniqlo or whatever it might be, and or Gremlins too. There's tons of Gremlins merchandise around here, ironically enough. And and I see students wearing these things all the time, and I ask them like, "Oh, Gremlins or Back to the Future," and they're like, "Oh, I've never seen it." And so I really think that's a reason why many of these students were interested in picking those two movies in particular, because they're always being exposed to the merchandise. And so that might be a thing with Baby Assassins too. Because it is presumably more readily available. I mean, it's on Netflix Japan here, not subtitled, unfortunately, which is why you had to help me out with that. So appreciate that. But so I wonder if the merchandise is also kind of encouraging people to check this movie out a little bit more too, which could also be a reason for its longevity, because there was a gap of 2 years between 1 and 2, but then there was only a year gap between 2 and 3, and then the TV show came out the same year as Nice Days.
yeah, the only delay was getting the series over here with like English subtitles took forever. They released like the first episode on YouTube with subtitles, and then the series didn't come over here in full from well over a year. And I think it just really bummed people out, because you would see like, okay, when's the second episode dropping with subtitles? And it just never came. And it was like, oh my goodness, I'm waiting forever. But I think I saw Fantastic Fest is September, so I would have seen the first one in September of 2021, and then it played here in Pittsburgh for like the Japanese Film Festival, maybe like 2 years after that, I want to say. So there was definitely a gap, and then the second one, and then the third one I saw in June of 2024, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, I've got to see if this is available now, the TV show or these other movies, at my local video store. Which, speaking of video stores, we actually still have those here, and that's actually kind of nice. So I'll have to see if they have them there, because I'm really, really interested in watching the other two movies and also the TV show now. And also Ghost Killer too. Like, I agree with you on.
I got you covered on all those. Don't worry about it.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, I agree with you completely. Like, Akari Takaishi, she really impressed me in this, and Saori Izawa to a lesser extent. I mean, I thought she also did a great job, but Takaishi, and I think it's part of it is the writing. I think Takaishi's character in this, it really kind of commands the screen in a bigger way.
Yeah, I think, she even and more so in like in Ghost Killer, she really gets the, she's the lead of the whole film, and it's she kind of takes over and gets to do different things, and really, and Baby Assassin's Nice Days in that film, she really gets to do a lot more fight sequences and action where you kind of would think, okay, Sayori Uzawa is the stunt woman. She's a specialist in that. That's her specialty. But yeah, she really steps up in later on in the series for sure. And she's not just like, the comedic relief.
Okay, yeah, I'm really curious to check out Ghost Killer now as well. But yeah, I think one of the reasons why this movie might be getting so much merchandise and becoming so popular is probably because I think this is speaking to a malaise in Japanese Gen Z. Just like with the kind of like the gig economy type stuff, the kind of having to do these part-time jobs and all of that, and the struggles of just like expectations that are put upon you. And I think I think that might be why this movie is becoming so popular.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to like if you care about the characters that much, you're gonna watch, I think, and you're gonna want to see what do these characters do next. And I think it's almost, like that kind of what is it, the shipping culture where it's they want the characters to kind of get together as well. Very similar to like Mulder and Scully. Like people would write, fan fiction, and people would want them to have like a romantic relationship throughout the series. Where I don't know, for me, I never felt that way. I was just like, I really much prefer them just being like having an amazing bond and not having a romantic relationship and just getting along together and having each other's backs. And I think that's kind of what, as this series develops, like you said, in the beginning, there's some kind of like fighting and bickering with them in the beginning of this film. And that kind of like subsides more towards the end of this movie.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's funny you mentioned that because one of the reviews that jumped out to me on Letterboxd is they called it John Wick Hikikomori Lesbian Edition, cutest couple ever. and And okay, so there are a few issues with that. First off, they're not hikikomori because those people they don't leave their house. They don't go out for work or anything like that. So that doesn't apply. They're just in the case of Mahito, she's just antisocial more than anything else. And yeah, I also didn't get any lesbian vibes or anything like that, or any sort of for me it very much felt like they look just like the female students, the friendships I see my female students involved in all the time in my work as a teacher. They just seemed very, very normal in that aspect. So, and not like it's abnormal, but just I didn't get any lesbian vibes off of them.
I think sometimes it's hard for people to like picture, just characters or just people in general having relationships that are that strong, or where people are that bonded where there's not something romantic involved with it. Where you just kind of like love somebody just as a person and not in some romantic way. And that's just what I kind of like about this film, is that and it gets more and more intense, I think, in terms of like the bond between the characters. So I don't know if Sakamoto, like if he knew he was going to be able to make more than just this one, or if he had an arc planned already. But it is interesting how things develop past this film for sure.
And that's another hallmark of those 90s films, right? The kind of like the friendship bond, talking about Clerks with Dante and Randall, or if you talk about, or even going back to the late 80s with Bill and Ted, Beavis and Butthead even. So like that whole idea of like the buddy comedy aspect of it really comes through a lot in this movie.
Yeah, and it's just like they're kind of a perfect fit for each other, and they balance each other out, and they support each other, and each of them has kind of their own flaws and deficiencies that the other one kind of makes up for and helps them overcome, I think, which is an element of the film.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, was there anything else you wanted to mention about Baby Assassins? That's kind of like the main things I wanted to talk about myself.
I mean, no, that's it. I mean, I would say, the I did a presentation actually so I got to present Nice Days when it premiered here in Pittsburgh at the local theater. And I did do a PowerPoint presentation about why Baby Assassins is the greatest trilogy ever made. Um, and I was like, I kind of argued with my PowerPoint presentation against other series. And now the rules were can only be three. It can't be like Alien with like, 8 movies or whatever they have. So it's like, I was arguing why it's the greater trilogy than The Godfather and why it's a greater trilogy than, Back to the Future. And, if anybody is interested in seeing my PowerPoint presentation, feel free to reach out to me and I would be happy to provide that to you.
Okay, great. Well, that's actually a good transition to ask you to tell people where they can find you or anything else you'd like to promote.
Oh, for sure. So you can find me at nokidgotcats.bandcamp.com. So I'm on Bandcamp. So I do a series of tapes. My third one is going to release next March, basically in conjunction with the Japanese Film Festival here. My first tape was the Baby Assassins tape that came out March of last year. And it was just named one of the top 100 cassettes of the year by Joyful Union, which is like a cassette blog, probably the biggest, maybe the only cassette blog. I don't know. Like cassettes are kind of an outdated technology, to be quite honest, but they're making a comeback. And it's digital. There's digital as well for people that are like, I never want to own a tape in my life. But yeah, so that was a pretty big honor. It was like, I think number 40 on the top 100 list. But basically these tapes are, it's sample based. So I sample other music. I program the drums. My friend, Marcus Pinn, he is a movie reviewer / DJ / producer, Pinland Empire. And I highly recommend people check out his reviews. He's an amazing writer and he has a lot of great perspectives on film. He does all the scratches on the tape. But yeah, so basically the tape is the concept is it goes along with the film. So every track is named after something within the film. There's dialogue samples from the film in the tracks. And basically, yeah, so it's basically I wanted to make companion pieces to the films because I love them so much. And I'll have that trilogy finished. I've had different artists for each tape. I had a Japanese manga artist do a slipcase that will house all 3 of the tapes. And I have Nathan Gelgood, who's like artist he's had stuff like New Yorker. He's doing the artwork for the 3rd tape. So I'm really, really excited. And I have like pins for sale on my site. I have stickers. So I have lots of cool stuff. So if anybody is a fan of the film, I think you would love the tapes. If you're not a fan of the film, but you like hip hop type sample based music, you might enjoy it and then might expose you to the films, which was my hope. So it's done pretty well considering it's a pretty niche project.
Well, very cool. Well, congratulations on that. Yeah, and we'll have the link to that in the show notes. I've just made sure to bookmark that for the listeners so they can check that out by clicking in the show notes. Yeah, that's interesting about cassette tapes making a comeback. I would never think that would happen. That was never on my radar.
I don't know about you, but like when your cassette would get eaten, I'd just be like, oh my gosh, you'd have to pull up a pencil. It's just like, I get vinyl. I get why that has made a comeback. But for me, the reason why it's on cassettes is one, my hope was at some point is to get some of these over to Japan. Because it is translated. All my liner notes, the track listing, everything is also in Japanese. So I didn't want to just make it in English because, and then get it over there and people they don't understand necessarily what I'm saying or what the tracks are and what that means. So my friend Satoko did all the translation for them. My mom was kind of stunned when I told her. She's like, so what are cassettes like now? And I'm like, they're the same as they were before. She's like, what? Why are people doing this? I said, I don't know. but it's also cost. Like I can't afford to do stuff on vinyl. That's I can't put out 3 tapes in the course of a year. That's something I can do, but 3 records would have been like, my wife would not have allowed me to do that for sure.
Yeah, I definitely sympathize with that aspect of it. Yeah. That's really interesting. Makes me wonder if VHS will be making a comeback as well.
It has. I mean,
it has really. Oh my God.
Oh yeah,
I was
yeah.
just making a joke.
There's definitely people that make custom VHS here, more for like the horror films and B movie. I think it's that kind of audience that really yearns for the nostalgia and kind of like, I mean, I recall my mom renting like VHS from the local video store for me as a kid and watching that stuff. And it's just something about that format. Like, they don't care if the presentation is not up to par and it's not 4K, and people don't care. They're just like, this kind of reminds me of something that I miss.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. It's funny because I was watching the TV show Yellow Jackets, and one of the characters there, she has like an old, like, media store, like VHS and all sorts of stuff like that. And my thought was like, who would be going there? But I guess I'm out of the loop, because I guess there is an audience for that.
Yeah. I mean, I walked into Vinegar Syndrome. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they are like a distributor in the US. They do a lot of cool stuff. They have like partner labels that put out a lot of Asian films. And they actually have a store here in Pittsburgh down the street from where I work. And I walked in there, and there's a wall of VHS. And I'm just like, this is, it's not for me, but if you like it, hey.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, it's funny. I guess 40-year-old virgin was wrong. It's not a dead technology, huh?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, never underestimate nostalgia, I think, is the lesson.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Peter, thanks again for coming on, and listeners, be sure to check out your Bandcamp. And again, the link will be in the show notes. As for us, japanonfilm.com is the website. We are japanonfilm.com on Blue Sky, Japan on Film on all the other socials, but Blue Sky is pretty much the best place to get in touch with me. And we are part of the Film Stories Podcast Network. If you check the show notes, you will find a link to the Discord community. So you click that, you can join the community. There's a special channel just for Japan on Film, but there's also channels for all the other shows on the network. And be sure to check out other shows on the network as well. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
The Japan on Film podcast is produced by me, Perry Constantine, in conjunction with the Film Stories Podcast Network. Visit japanonfilm.com for show notes, episodes, and information about being a guest yourself. You can also reach out to me on the website's contact form if you have questions or comments about Japanese movies or the show itself. The show is at Japan on Film on Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, so please be sure to follow us. If you'd like to support the show, you can donate on japanonfilm.com, purchase from our advertisers, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Join the Film Stories Podcast Network Discord from the link in the show notes to connect with me and many other cinema fans and podcasters.
You can't reason with the sun. Trust us, we've tried. This summer, it's time to put that angry ball of fire on mute. Columbia's Omni-Shade technology is engineered to protect you from the sun's harsh rays that can burn and damage your skin. The sun is relentless, but so is our gear. Level up your summer at Columbia.com to spend more time outside and less time slathering on aloe lotion. You're welcome. Columbia, engineered for whatever.